Hello everyone, it's Janet and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to make 10 cards using the August Fully Loaded kit from Creative Escape Papercrafting. This kit features the My Bright Life paper and ephemera collection from Jen Hadfield. It also includes 3 products from Vicki Boutin, including a watercolor crayon, her artist glaze, and a stamp set. This month it also includes a full-size stamp pad from Lawn Fawn. In today's video, I'll be covering several card making techniques. Even if you don't have this kit, you'll find several ideas you can incorporate into your own projects. I'll start by showing you a fancy diamond fold card. Then I'll use the watercolor crayon and glaze in several different ways, and I'll finish up by demonstrating an off-the-edge die cut technique that includes a mat for a truly finished look. If you'd like to see all the products included in this month's kit, click on the video thumbnail at the end of this video or on the link in the video description, and check out the CEP website so you can get your own kit or other card making supplies. Before we begin, I want to thank my current subscribers for being part of this crafting community. If you're new to my channel, I humbly ask for your support. Please click on the subscribe and notification buttons right now. Thanks so much, and let's get started. Before I started making my cards, I went ahead and stamped with the main images using the chili pepper and black ink, and then also gold embossing powder. Now on the red and black, I also used clear embossing powder over the top. And then I cut them out using the included dies and also some fussy cutting. And here they all are ready to use as I proceed. Card number 1 is a fancy fold called a diamond fold, and I've got another video that I've got the link here to that you can go to learn how to make this fancy fold. It was just a little too long to add to this video, but you can see here how I decorated it, and it leaves this beautiful diamond in the center. Now what I'm doing to finish the decoration is I decided to put the Hello Love sentiment, which I think is really cute, on this piece of vellum, and then heat embossed it with gold powder. Now I'll cut that down by fussy cutting it really closely to the words, and then to make that a sticker I will run it through my Xyron maker, and then we'll place it right over the top of that. So first thing I'm going to do is attach the this really pretty ephemera piece that came with the Jen Hadfield My Bright Life set. It has some gold in there on the plate part of it, and then I'm going to, as I said, run that sentiment through the Xyron, and that will make it a sticker. And because it's got an even coating of adhesive behind the vellum, it really will blend in nicely and not look like I've got glue on that vellum. To finish this card off, I'm going to apply some sequins and also a little bit of Wink of Stella on the flowers and the butterflies, and this will finish off my first card. And you'll see that the end result is such a pretty card from both the front, the top, and all sides of this card. Okay, on to card number 2. The first thing I'm going to do is stamp the sentiment for this card using Versamark on black cardstock that I had applied some embossing powder to. Once the white powder is on there, I can go ahead and use the heat gun to melt that powder right onto the cardstock. And then to get rid of that film from the embossing buddy, I use a eraser to take that off, and I can set this aside for a few minutes. Next, I'm going to use the Vicki Boutin crayon. Mine is blue, so I thought I would use it to color the flower and part of the bird blue. And I tried a few different things. I did the wrong thing by trying to just color some of that crayon on my glass mat. I should have wet that down a little bit, and it would have gone down a lot better. As it was, it sort of broke into pieces, and then I just used my wet brush to dampen those pieces down so I could get the pigment off, and that worked just fine. I could have also used my wet brush or a regular brush and just brushed it right on the crayon to pick up the pigment instead of putting it on my glass mat. This was kind of an experiment, and I realized afterward there were a few different ways to skin the cat, if you will. So I'll just point that out, that you don't have to do what I did here. You could easily just paint right from the tip of the crayon onto your brush and then onto your paper. But this worked just fine, and I liked the result of it. This crayon goes a long way, so don't be worried if you use a few pieces like I did. You'll still have plenty for other projects. Now the next step for this card, I cut a scalloped oval here, and I'm edging it with some blue oxide ink. I believe it's Broken China, just to make it stand out even more against the white cardstock that I'm going to put it on. And obviously here I'm going to lift it up using the double-sided foam tape. And that will go right in the middle more or less. I'm just eyeballing it there. I love this paper with all the birds. It's so cheery and pretty. And now I'm going to use some of the flowers that I had previously cut out. There's the blue one that I of course painted. I'm just going to apply that directly to the cardstock there. And then I'm going to also apply the big red flower, and I'm going to put one part of it up because I have to match the height of that center scallop piece, and then I put the little gold flower also up just to give it more dimension, and then I'm going to tuck this pretty bluebird back in there to look as if he's just standing among the flowers. Now you'll see my sentiment, and I've matted it here, and I'm going to apply it the same way where I've got to put a little bit of it up to match the height of the scalloped oval. And I really liked how that looked. It's fairly simple, but yet it's so pretty. I used some Wink of Stella to highlight the red flower, and I'm also going to use some Nouveau drops in Duck Egg Blue. And after I put them on the oval with the birds, I realized it really didn't stand out enough, so I added a few more on the corner there on the left, and then also some blue glitter Nouveau drops just to make it stand out a little bit more, and I liked that result a bit better. Then I used some of the 3mm gold rhinestones and put them in the largest red flower as an accent. And then I used one of the larger gold gemstones on the blue flower, and that finished off card number 2. Very pretty. Okay, for card number 3, I'm going to start by making a frame for a shaker card. So I have a nested circle set here that I've used on a piece of cardstock that came in the kit. And then this is going to go onto my card panel, the front card panel. I'm just kind of laying out where my sentiment's going to go and where that shaker hole is going to be on my front card panel. And so what you're seeing me doing here is just making sure that I have my placement centered from side to side of the card panel. And then at the very end, I'll just make sure that, again, that I have enough room for my sentiment. And once I'm all satisfied with that, I can go ahead and cut it out with my Cuttlebug. And the end result is that I have that hole exactly where I want it to be. All right, so then the next thing I'm going to do is punch out all these little holes that I need to have. It's a scallop shape, but all the little circles in the scallops didn't completely come out, so I'm go ahead and take care of that. And then the other thing I'm going to do is use some Distress Oxide, sorry, this is just Distress ink in Vintage Photo, and I'm just going to use that to age this frame a little bit on the inside and the outside. This will also help it stand out a bit from this striped paper, which has a very bold appearance and might blend in too much. I figured if I didn't do that. And then to further add some patina to this card, I went ahead and used some of the distressed ink in that same Vintage Photo around the edges of the hole, and it just will give it some age and some character, more or less. And I'm going to use my art glitter glue to apply the frame now. And the next thing I'm going to do is prepare some craft foam to go underneath that panel. Here you'll see that craft foam. I'll bring it out again. You'll see a little bit more about that in a minute here. But I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Now here is the cardstock panel again. Here is some acetate I applied over the top of some adhesive, and there's that craft foam that I'm going to apply next. I will just go ahead and use ATC gun adhesive. It works quite well with the craft foam. I never have any problem with that, so I would prefer to use that though than wet glue in most cases. So after applying that craft foam to the back of the card panel, I can now place the center part of the shaker where I want it to be. And the first thing I'm doing is applying the piece of ephemera on the back piece that I had cut originally from that cardstock. So in other words, I'm putting it back in and taking advantage of the fact that it fits, and that's a pretty little piece to go behind there. And once I get it to where I want it to be, I'm going to glue that down without moving it around so that it will still be where I want it when I'm ready for the next step. I'm going to use the ATG gun glue again to go around that circle very heavily with the adhesive, and this will stop anything from, moving around and coming out. In other words, this is my shaker bits that I'm going to use in there. I don't want them to come out, and so that adhesive will stop that from happening. Next are my shaker bits that I'm adding. They're just sequins of various sizes and kind of these gemmy colors, and then I'll be able to apply my card panel over the top of that. Now I made a little error here. I put the card panel on crooked, so I had to cut it off, and here I've just got the card panel itself. Again, I will reattach that to a new card base, but for now I'm just going to use it as you see here. I'll apply my Hello sentiment, which is an ephemera piece. This beautiful wood grain tag is gorgeous. And then I'm going to take one of the very small butterflies, bend it up, and apply it to the card base using glitter glue, and this really sticks well, so it will work very well if you want to do that. And then I put 3 Nouveau drops at the top, and I use the larger butterfly at the top right corner. To complete this card, I just need to reattach the card front to a new card base using wet glue, and with that, card number 3 is finished. Before moving on to card 4, I want to just demonstrate using the Vicky Bouton glaze that came in your kit with just using a sponge to add some texture to something as simple as this tag. Just dabbing it on really gives this tag some cool dimension, and I just wanted to show you that before I move to using a stencil. So let me show you this tag now that it's dry. It's got such beautiful texture and shine. I'm going to apply one of these little ephemera flowers here at the bottom, and then I'm going to shape one of the small butterflies that I'd previously stamped and heat embossed with clear embossing powder. And then I'm going to use some of the pink ribbon and the dark navy and white baker's twine that came in the kit to thread through the top of the tag for a beautiful little look. To finish this tag off, I'm going to use 3 of the Studio Katia satin rainbow confetti sequins. They really are pretty. I love that they don't have a hole in them, and you don't have to worry about glue seeping through or looking weird. And they just really add such a beautiful touch to this tag. And there you go. Now let's move on to card 4. Here is a stencil. It is from the Crafter's Workshop. It's a 6x6 stencil, and it's called Mini Butterfly Collage. I'm only going to use this circle stencil portion with the butterfly in the center. And we're going to take some glaze using my craft knife here and apply it in as if I'm buttering toast, really. That's the same kind of motion that I'm going to use with this. It's not perfect. Some is inevitably going to seep through and around some of the edges of the stencil, but I don't care, because actually this is just a very organic looking stencil, and if it has a little bit of leaking here and there, it just kind of adds to the image in my view. So I'm going to take off this blue painter's tape, which is holding everything down, and you'll soon see this beautiful image on the dark navy and gray cardstock. It's just gorgeous. Now I can work on my sentiment. I'm going to create kind of a collage here using a little strip of that pretty multicolored bird paper on top of some black cardstock, and then on top of that is a Thinking of You tag from the ephemera package. All of this is going to go at the bottom of my card, but before I do that, I'm going to use some black and white baker's twine that came in the kit, and I'm going to tie a simple knot in front of it. Now, to save some twine, I'm going to put one end of it and secure it with some washi tape and cut it off. Then I'm going to do the other end the same way. That way I save that strip of baker's twine between the 2 pieces in the back of the sentiment where nobody can see it anyway. Just saves on the twine and makes it go a little bit further. Now I cut down my stenciled panel, and I've put it now on some black cardstock to mat it. And I've also added one of the pieces I had previously stamped before I started. This is some, it's an image of some leaves, and then I will go ahead and tie just a very simple knot off to the left here to give it a little bit more interest. Trim it down, and I'll have a sentiment ready to go at the bottom of the card. So there we go. I'm going to apply this on a little bit of foam tape, and you'll see that next, that I flip that over and add some foam. This will also give it some dimension and lift, which I do want on the card front. This completed panel is going to go on a white card base, but first I'm going to use some fun foam, and I'm cut a slice of it to fit just slightly smaller than my panel. I'm using ATC glue to attach that to the back of my panel, and then ATC glue again on top so it can stick to my card base. There is nothing else needed for this card to be complete, and so there you have it, card number 4. So let's start card number 5. I've cut 2 border strips using a punch, and I'm going to apply them on either side of this cut apart that came from the big 12 by 12 cut apart sheet included in the kit. Now if you don't have this little lacy kind of border, you could use another border type, or you could even just cut one slice, or I should say strips, or 2 strips, and make your own little border to accent the edges of this cut apart. This is going to be for a wedding card that I actually need in the near future, and so I thought it would be nice to use something that looked a little bit lacy, and that's also why I chose to use vellum in this case. But honestly, you could use almost anything you wanted for the border, whether it be cardstock, vellum, or whatever you have on hand. Now I'm going to apply this to a card base that I cut to fit the cut apart with the lace border on it. So I just measured that and gave it a little extra room on each side. That was all. Nothing too particular about that. Of course, I will have to make my own envelope, but not a big deal. And then I took the edges of that lacy border and kind of pushed it up so it would have some dimension. Then I applied this pretty gold flower and flourish that came in the ephemera package and put that at the bottom. Now I was messing around with this tag. I thought I would round the corners. It just didn't really work, but really what I wanted to do was not have any of the tag peeking over the top of the bow that I had previously made with some of the pretty light blue satin ribbon from the kit. And so I made a 3-loop bow there and attached it with a glue dot, and I really like that look. Now to finish it off, I'm going to use a few of the rhinestones that came in the kit. The large size, I think they're the 5mm size. I put one of those in the flower in that flourish below. And then I apply 4 total of the 3mm yellow gems up in the flowers on top of the cake. I think the gems placed in this way really added a lot to this card. The last touch was to use a little bit of a wink of Stella to outline the word cake, and with that, card number 5 was complete. I think this made a perfect wedding card. Alright, so let's start card number 6. I'm going to just scrape off a few bits and pieces of the crayon, and I'm going to add some of the Vicky Bouton glaze that's included in your kit. And that just mixed nicely with a brush. It melted pretty easily actually. And I just kept adding more shavings until I got it the color or the intensity that I wanted. But this really created just a gorgeous metallic iridescent paste that holds some shape and is just lovely. It really, really is. Now I'm going to bring back the stencil I was using before, but I'm going to use a different part of it. I've got some areas on this stencil. The bottom piece here that I'm using right now kind of looks like a trellis. And what I'm doing is just using my sponge this time to sponge it on over the top. And then I'm going to do the same on the bottom using some of the, again, some of the paste with just a plain old sponge. And this part looks a little bit more like a honeycomb pattern. And this will give me a real pretty organic look to the card front that I'm building here. Now I'm also going to use a little bit of this. It kind of looks like a water stain, and I applied that over the top as well. And then I went ahead and added more of little just spots and places with the sponge all over the card to kind of even everything out. The last thing I did was apply some gold shimmer spray, and then I let that dry. So here it is after both the glaze and the shimmer spray has dried. You can see that pretty shimmer to the card base. It's really pretty. And then I've used some of that black and white baker's twine and tied that across on the left side with a knot down toward the bottom. And then I've got this very large piece of ephemera. It says "Love You So Much." It's just really, really pretty. And I'm going to use this in the center of the card. It's really, I guess, not quite center, might be a little bit lower than center, but pretty close to center. And then I'm going to create some collaging around the edges of it in two corners. So for this upper corner, I'm using one of the birds that I had previously stamped and embossed with the gold embossing powder. And then that flower ephemera piece I'm clustering there with it. It looks so pretty there together. I'll go ahead and put that on, and then I can start on the bottom cluster or collage of flowers and ephemera. So here's the flower ephemera. I'm going to use a couple of the red stamps that I had previously done. And again, this is using that wonderful chili pepper ink pad, and then I heat embossed with clear embossing powder over the top of that. So first went on the larger of the two flowers, then the ephemera piece on top of that, and then I just tuck that little one down below both of them. And the last touch is this pretty green and gold butterfly. It's part of the ephemera pack. I decided to put it right on the top of the flowers as if it were resting there. I really didn't think I needed anything more on this card, and so this is finished card number 6. Just so pretty. Well, here we go with card number 7, and we're going to do some off the edge die cutting. Now this is the rose die, and I figured out where my two folds are going to be. So this is where the first one's going to be, where I place the edge of my plate there, and it will not cut beyond the edge of that plate. So you'll see when I take the die off, it does only have a partial die cut there. Now my cut went a little further than I intended, so I'm just going to move back that fold a little bit to match where the die started. And you only want to create the crease up to the die, not through the die cut itself. Then I'm going to also go ahead and put 3 total creases in, so I'll end up with like a 3-fold card. But this is still about 4 1/4 wide, so it will fit into an A2 size envelope. Now here is that same paddle with the partial die done, and I've laid out the stamp and used this gorgeous chili pepper stamp pad. I'm going to apply this twice to get a very crisp and pretty red rose image. And once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and create a mat. Now here is a piece of the green polka dot paper, and I'm just setting it up and feeling where that die fits the edge of the die cut that I'd previously done, and that tells me exactly where to do the next partial die cut, and that's going to go right here, and you can see how well it did work out. I'm doing the very same thing for the second panel next to it, just pushing on that die to find the right placement, and then taking that away and cutting it out. And I got to tell you guys, it worked beautifully. It fit this partial die cut like a charm, like a glove. Now the last thing I'm going to do, and this actually was done, as you can tell, before I glued everything in place, but I compensated for this short edge that I'd created because the die cut went a little farther than I intended, by just placing a piece of that striped paper behind the last or the outside edge there. And it actually created a little more interest, and I like it better that way. So again, as I call it, these happy little accidents, it actually worked to my benefit. Now the next thing I'm going to do is finish putting all the panels on and just attaching them with wet glue. And this creates 4 separate panels. Each one folds over and creates a really pretty, almost like W fold, I guess you would call it. Now I can finish decorating this card, and I'm going to pull out 2 more of the big rose stamp and die cuts that I had done previously. There's the gold and also the black. And so I'm going to build this up using foam tape to put both roses clustered on top of that partial die cut rose that's in red. And this really created a very pretty look to the 3 roses. Now the gold, I did have to use 2 layers of foam tape, one on top of the other, so that it would be higher than the other. And the effect there was really pretty. All right. Now here's also where I switched over to green nail polish. I don't know if you noticed, but before I had yellow and now I have green, and it worked great with this card. But anyway, I had previously stamped the "You're the Best" sentiment and mounted it on black. And the final touches were some of these, again, very pretty sequins. And that finishes card number 7. I really think it turned out great. All right, here we are with card number 7. Now I've made a 5 5/8 inch square card base, which folds at the top. And then I'm applying a slightly smaller piece of this really pretty dark green and gold cardstock. It's one of the 6x6 pieces from the kit. And then I cut 4 2x2 squares using a piece of cardstock that was included. So I've got 4 different colors here: light blue, the dark navy, the craft, and the pink. And then I'm going to lay these up across the card so that each diamond point touches. Now, obviously I figured all this out and cut the mat or the card base to fit these squares. And the reason is I wanted to highlight embroidery hoops. There is another piece of 6x6 paper and has a whole bunch of embroidery hoops with different words on it. So I took that and cut out some of those embroidery hoops to use on this card because I thought they were just so pretty and I liked the size as well. So 4 of them worked nicely. So once I get this all in place with them touching the corners, and then, you know, again, I'm just gluing them in place using wet glue. It doesn't matter too terribly much if they aren't perfectly touching in the corners, and you'll see why in a moment. But now that I've got those in place, I've taken those embroidery hoops that I trimmed out and I've applied 2-sided foam tape to them and placed them one on each of the diamonds. So you get kind of this argyle pattern. Here is the sentiment to place in the center, and it says "Blossom to Awesome," which I thought was a lovely sentiment on top of all this paper that has flowers and greenery. Now I can place the 4 bows that I previously made out of white and yellow twine that came in the kit, and this is why your corners don't have to exactly match, because this will hide it if it doesn't. And with that, card number 8 is done. Okay, we're on card 9, and this time I'm using the Vicki Boutin crayon on a stamp directly. And I softened up the crayon just a little bit with a wet wipe first before applying the color to the stamp. And then I will go ahead and just spray that or mist it with some water to activate it and then stamp with it. And then I'll keep doing this, just applying the crayon over the top and spraying it. Now, this is not a perfectly clean or crisp image. It's a very organic image. And in places where there were more water droplets than there's kind of a running effect. So you get sort of this watercolor kind of look to it. It's really pretty though. And I like how this has worked out on this card. And you'll see that I continue kind of using organic shapes on it, and altogether it works really nicely. Now you saw some shine in that, but that was just water, and I want to make sure you know that there is no glimmer or shine to the crayons. Now I'm going to mix some green Distress Oxide ink with the Vicki Boutin glaze to create this really pretty green glaze. And I'm going to use it here to paint on simple teardrop leaf shapes. So again, this is very organic, very not precise. I'm not much of an artist, and you could tell that. So I know anybody can do this. You just use your flat brush and kind of draw a teardrop with it on your paper, and it's going to create a really simple but recognizable leaf shape. Now the glaze is also dimensional, so in some places it acts like oil painting. You can see the brush stroke, and I think that's really cool as well. I liked that a lot. So I just continued filling in with the green here and there and everywhere until I was happy with the overall look of that. And then I set it aside to dry after that was done. And I used a heat gun to dry it. It didn't take too long, and that allowed me to keep moving along. So I think that's finally getting close to the end here. Put in another one, and there we go. All right, so now I have trimmed down the panel. I put a piece of blue fun foam on the back, and then I've applied that to a card base with a dark navy matte, and then the card base itself is the medium blue. This thank you sentiment came in the ephemera pack, and what I did was put a piece of that blue satin ribbon across the top of it. Then I made a bow with the lighter blue satin ribbon, placed the bicycle on the top of that, and then finished off with a little wink of Stella. And this completes card 9. Okay guys, we're on card 10. I'm going to start by taking a little bit of the leftover pink paper that I had from the previous cards I made, and I'm going to put a strip of it, just a thin strip, on each side of this A2 card. This is going to be a horizontal card, so these pink stripes will be on each side, left and right. Now I have a piece of this really cute kitchen cooking paper from the paper pack, and I've applied that over the strips, and then I'll go ahead and trim it down. And then this is how I get a nice even look without having to do too much measurement or effort. Next I'm going to use that just so cute tag. I had to use it, and then these bowls again had to use that. And I'm gluing that down at a slight angle, and then I'll use a glue dot to secure the yellow and white twine where I want it to stay, so it doesn't go wandering across the card. It'll always be right where I intended it to be. Now this is a large ephemera embroidery hoop message that says congrats, and then I'm going to use a piece of foam tape on this large pink and gold butterfly. She's setting at an angle and kind of looks like she might be flying. And then the last thing is to apply the bow that I made previously at the top of that embroidery hoop. And that finishes card 10. Well, this was such a fun kit to work with. I hope you enjoyed seeing all of my cards. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and take a look at some of the other videos that I've put up here for your enjoyment. Well, that's all for me today. I'll see you soon, but until then, keep crafting. Bye.